The capital trembled beneath another sonic blast as the eastern defensive wall gave way. Mael Turin stood behind a fractured hollow shield, blood seeping from a burn across his ribs, shouting orders into a calm that only crackled back static. Koran dropcraft swarmed above like carrion birds, tearing through the last of the aerial drones. The Valyri line, what remained of it, was scattered across broken streets, outnumbered and outgunned. He watched one of the last mechs collapse in the fire, its pilot's final scream echoing through open comms. They wouldn't last the next push, but they had sent the signal. Help was coming. 2 days ago, the Galactic Concord had promised reinforcements. Just hold, they said. Reinforcements en route. They hadn't specified who. They hadn't said when. But Valyri Prime had trusted them, because the Concord was the backbone of order. Even Mael, a soldier who never trusted politicians, had dared to hope. Now, he watched as the horizon darkened, not with saviors, but with annihilation. He ducked behind cover as a plasma shell scorched past, turning a nearby platform into molten slag. His comm officer, Vea, crawled toward him, face streaked with soot. "Sir," she gasped, "no Concord signature in range. No jump beacons. No warp trails. Nothing." He didn't answer. What was there to say? The Korans were pressing hard. Their dread ships had burned the southern hemisphere, and now their troops were mopping up what little resistance remained. The council was bunkered underground, silent. Civilians were locked away in mountain shelters that might soon become mass graves. Mael had 2 squads left, less than 30 fighters. The rest were either dead or too injured to hold a rifle. He watched the Koran crawler tank smash through a temple wall. It pivoted toward the resistance pocket and fired a disruptor beam. 3 soldiers vanished in a flash of violet light. His people screamed, cursed, died. And still, no help. He tapped his wrist pad again, forcing it to transmit. "This is Commander Mael Turin of Valyri Prime. We are out of time. Concord forces promised aid. If you're out there, this is your last chance. Come now or don't come at all." Then it happened. The sky cracked. It wasn't the sleek, pristine cruisers of the Concord that arrived. The clouds split with thunder, and through them came blocky, uneven silhouettes. Ships of black and gray, scarred with heat burns, armored like floating fortresses. There were no visible insignia, no transmission codes, just dozens of them, punching into atmosphere with brute force, ignoring protocols, ignoring orbit stabilization, descending like falling mountains. One of Mael's squad mates raised a rifle instinctively. "Are those Koran reinforcements?" Vea squinted, shaking her head. "No, too big, too ugly." The lead ship halted midair with a violent tremor, hovering over the battlefield like a hammer ready to fall. Beneath it, the Korans hesitated. Their front line looked up, confused. It wasn't their ship. It didn't respond to their hails. Then the drop pods fell. They struck like meteorites, thick black coffins slamming into craters with such force that shock waves knocked back Koran troopers. At first, no one moved. Then the pods hissed open, steam venting in all directions, revealing figures inside, tall, humanoid, armored in jagged exosuits with glowing slits across their chests and shoulders. Mael's breath caught. He'd seen Concord troopers before. These weren't them. These weren't polished or diplomatic. These things looked like they'd been built to end wars, not negotiate them. One of the newcomers stepped forward, dragging a massive weapon unlike anything in Mael's arsenal. It locked onto a Koran skimmer tank and fired once. The blast tore the vehicle in half, sending its occupants flying in pieces. Then all hell broke loose. The unknown warriors surged forward, but not like disciplined troops. They moved like predators unleashed, leaping from crater to crater, engaging at close range, firing as they advanced with ruthless precision. Their weapons didn't miss. They didn't hesitate. They didn't fall. Koran lines shattered almost instantly. Entire squads dropped their rifles and fled into the smoke. One Deathworlder, Mael had no other word for it, grabbed the Koran commander by the throat, crushed his helmet with one hand, and tossed the body into a building with a thud. Mael and his troops just stood there, stunned. This wasn't a rescue mission. It was an execution. Who are they? Vale whispered. He didn't know, and that terrified him more than the Korans. Across the ruins of the temple square, a group of the Deathworlders advanced through rubble, stepping over burning corpses and shattered armor. One of them turned toward Mael's position, gaze unreadable behind a dark visor. It didn't raise a weapon. It just stared for a second too long before moving on. Then a message crackled through the emergency band. One line, no encryption, no origin code. Assistance rendered. Do not interfere. That was it. Mael's jaw clenched. He repeated the words aloud, unsure whether to be relieved or horrified. Vea checked her scanner. They're not Concord, she said. I'm getting no shared protocols. They're not using standard frequencies. Power cores are off-spectrum. And her voice faltered. They're not in any known database. Not in ours, not in the Concord's. Before he could respond, an old man stumbled into their position. Scholar Drental, archivist of the Southern Academies. He held a cracked tablet, trembling. I know what they are, he said breathlessly. I found a reference in the pre-Concord archives. Long before the Union, back when charting was new, there's mention of a system. Sol, designated Deathworld Class V. Mael frowned. That's a myth. Ghost coordinates. No confirmed contact. Dren shook his head violently. The records were buried, hidden, but not destroyed. There are stories of a species born on a death world, a world of tectonic fury, apex predators, biological warfare, and extinction cycles. No empire ever tried to colonize it. The few who approached never came back. Mael looked back toward the battlefield, toward the Deathworlders advancing with impunity, toward the Koran fleet breaking apart in the sky, retreating in disarray. What stories? He asked quietly. They called them Terrans, Dren whispered, but no one ever believed they still existed. Mael stared at the clouds, now burning with streaks of drop pod fire, and retreating enemy ships. His voice was low. They do now. One of the Deathworlders walked calmly through the wreckage, dragging a weapon longer than his own body, steam rising from the barrels. Mael watched from cover, unsure whether to move or remain invisible. The Valyri lines had gone silent. Everyone was watching. Even the Korans, scattered and disorganized, were too stunned to engage. Whatever these newcomers were, they had flipped the battle in under 10 minutes. That wasn't just power. It was something far more dangerous. It was control. Vea crouched beside Mael, adjusting her visor with trembling fingers. They're not just soldiers. They're something else. He didn't respond. Words wouldn't fit. The unknowns were moving in coordinated packs of 5 or 6, but their behavior was more like wolves than military units. One would break ahead to draw fire. Another would flank. The rest would descend like precision-guided nightmares. Koran mechs that had resisted full-strike teams were now toppling like rusted toys. Some tried to retreat, but the humans cut off escape routes, hurting them with fire corridors and calculated explosives. Not random, not lucky, tactical. Yet everything about their posture felt feral. They don't fight like the Concord, Mael muttered. No formations, no retreat paths, no backup batteries. They just move forward. One Koran cruiser attempted a low-altitude pass, hoping to provide air cover. The Deathworlders didn't even look up. A ripple passed through their ranks, and suddenly, a single figure launched skyward on magnetic boots. It crashed into the belly of the ship and detonated something internally. The cruiser exploded midair in 2 clean halves, the flaming wreckage falling in perfect silence. Mael flinched. That wasn't possible. Not even Concord elite strike teams could breach a war cruiser with a solo unit. No one said anything for a long while. There was nothing left to say. Then a Deathworlder approached. This one was shorter than the others. Stockier, armor scuffed and scarred in ways that suggested decades of use. It walked straight into the Valyri command trench and stopped a few feet from Mael, visor staring into him like a blade pressed to the soul. No weapon raised. Just silence. Mael stepped forward, carefully. You're not Concord, he said evenly. The being didn't answer. Instead, a sharp burst of static erupted from Mael's comm. Assistance rendered. said the same voice as before, the tone machine perfect. "Do not interfere." Mail kept his gaze steady. "We didn't request you." The Deathworlder tilted its head slightly, then responded, not through the comm, but with distorted voice through its helmet speakers. "No, you requested help, and help arrived." Vea's scanner lit up. "Mail," she whispered urgently. "I'm detecting something. Their armor, it's rejecting our scans. Everything is compartmentalized. Internal shielding. It's like they don't want anyone knowing what's under there. We're not here to scan them." Mail snapped. Then softer, "We're here to survive." One of the younger soldiers stepped forward, whispering to the group, "Are we sure they're not going to turn on us?" No one answered. Then, over the open frequency, came a raw, unencrypted sound. Screaming. Korans. Entire battalions begging for mercy. "Unknown hostiles overwhelming all fronts," said a terrified Koran officer. Unaware his channel was open. Weapons ineffective. Armor penetration impossible. "We need evacuation." "No, we need surrender." The feed cut. Somewhere in the southern quarter, a giant explosion sent a mushroom of red plasma into the air. Another Koran facility down. No human units were lost. Dren returned from the back with shaking hand, holding another data slate. I cross-referenced the ship designs with what little ancient records I could scrape together. There's no match, but look at this. He projected a grainy image, an old relic from a scout probe lost 2 centuries ago. A silhouette of a blocky cruiser against the glare of a hostile sun, almost identical to what now hovered in Valyri skies. "Terran?" Mail asked. "No doubt," Dren said. "That sun, that soul. Only one system fits the alignment." A silence settled again. Then Vea broke it, staring at the Deathworlders encircling a Koran outpost like wolves around a carcass. "Why now?" she asked. "Why here?" No one's seen them in over 2 centuries. The last records say the Terrans isolated themselves after the Great Accord refused them entry. Dren nodded grimly. "Too dangerous," they said. "Too violent. Too human." Mail's jaw tightened. And now they're back. Below, the Deathworlders entered the outpost and didn't fire a shot. The Korans were already surrendering. Some were throwing down weapons before the Terrans even got close. The same static voice returned on all channels. "Tactical sweep complete. Perimeter secured. You are advised to remain non-combative." "Or what?" One of Mail's junior officers hissed. Mail cut him off with a glance. "We're not testing them." Then a new figure emerged. This one walked differently. Deliberate, unhurried. Smaller than the others. No weapon. Their armor hissed as it depressurized, helmet splitting open to reveal a human face. Scarred, pale, hardened by things no Valyri could comprehend. A woman, perhaps midlife, with dark eyes that never blinked and a voice that was calm as cold iron. "We heard your cry for help," she said. Mail stepped forward slowly. "You're Terran?" "Yes." "Why now?" She looked around the battlefield, where Koran bodies were still smoldering. "Because silence would be an answer too, and your Concord gave none. You're not part of it." She almost laughed. "They refused us centuries ago. Feared us. That's fine. We adapted." Mail hesitated. "Then why come?" She met his eyes. "Because you were prey, and we don't like bullies." Then she turned her back and rejoined her people, who disappeared into the fog as fast as they come. The battle was over, but Mail had never felt less like a victor. He watched the horizon where the Terran ships still hovered. Not allies, not enemies. Something else. The bodies hadn't cooled before the Deathworlders began reshaping the battlefield. They didn't retreat, didn't rest, didn't wait for orders. They moved with a terrifying rhythm, planting beacons, rerouting energy grids, and sealing underground bunkers with strange, self-boring tech. Where the Valyri had fought desperately just to hold ground, the humans were restructuring it in real time. Mail stood on a crumbled rooftop with Vea, watching a squad of them lift a Koran siege tank with a drone rig, harvest its core, and detonate the shell like garbage. They weren't just winning the war. They were rewriting the rules. Vea adjusted her scope again. They don't use any known logistics chain. No supply drops, no repair bays. Everything they need they build or scavenge or already have on them. Mail nodded. They fight like they've never known luxury. Like every bullet might be their last, and they're going to make it count. One of the Terran units activated a small box-like device that pulsed once. Quran tech, within 100 meters, simply shut off. No sparks, no explosions. Just silence. Entire Quran communication lines went dark. Their orbital surveillance ceased. Their targeting systems blinked out mid-fire. "What is that?" Vale whispered. "Suppression tech." Mail muttered, "Far beyond what the Concord allows. It's not even in the black market arsenals. This is engineered extinction." Quran commanders had begun retreating into fortified bunkers to regroup. The humans didn't siege them conventionally. They deployed miniature seismic nodes, placed by hand around perimeter, and within minutes, the ground simply opened. Screaming officers, armor, steel, and flame disappeared into collapsing trenches. No warning, no mercy, no pause. The few Quran strongholds that held out longer than an hour received personal visits. A single Deathworlder unit would approach, wait, and when fire rained down on them, walk through it unharmed, throwing some sort of nanite mist that devoured metal and plastic alike. Mail heard reports of entire squads being dissolved in their own sealed armor. Still, no humans died. Not a single one. Their medics, if they had any, were never seen. Their injured? Unclear. No bodies, no trails. If one fell, they were pulled away within seconds. If they bled, no one saw it. One of Mail's recon teams attempted to follow a Deathworlder strike group. They returned 4 minutes later, shaken and pale, claiming they'd been warned once. No words, just a private comm burst. Stop watching. When they didn't, their gears shorted out and their bones vibrated with low-frequency pulses. They turned back. The Deathworlders didn't attack them. They just made it clear this wasn't your war anymore. In orbit, the last Quran dreadnought made a desperate attempt to regain momentum, targeting the Valyri capital with a fusion lance. It never fired. The beam began to charge, and then, without warning, a black blinked into reality directly atop the dreadnought. No visible weapons. No beam. No blast. The ship simply imploded. Mail stared at the readouts, stunned. No explosion. No debris. No radiation. Just gone. Do you understand what this means? Dren said, standing beside him. They've mastered something we can't even name. Mail didn't respond. The fear didn't come from what the humans had done to the Qurans. It came from what they hadn't done. They hadn't claimed land, hadn't installed governors, hadn't asked for tribute or loyalty or resources. They took nothing. They said nothing. They just fought and won. The Valyri Council emerged from their bunkers the next day, confused, cautious. They wanted to meet with the Terran command, establish diplomatic channels, offer thanks, perhaps a treaty. But when Mail relayed the message, the Deathworlders gave no answer. Instead, one Terran broke protocol and entered Valyri territory without escort. The same woman Mail had seen before. No armor this time, just plain survival gear, a pulse pistol at her hip, and a small device clamped to her wrist. He met her in the war room, alone. "You saved us," he said. She shrugged. "You were losing. We were dying." Same thing. He studied her. "Why?" She looked him in the eye. "Because we don't like tyrants." That simple. She nodded. "Always has been. But you don't even know us. We don't need to. And what happens when the Concord finds out you interfered?" She smiled, humorless. "They already know. They just won't say anything. Not to us." Mail clenched his fists. "Why do they fear you?" She tapped her wrist device. A projection appeared. Dozens of planets, some of them Concord member worlds, once enslaved or at war, now free. Because when we get involved, we don't follow rules. We end problems. He looked at her grimly. "There's a word for people who do that. It's not hero." She didn't flinch. "I don't care what you call us. We don't need titles. We listen for the signal. And when we hear someone cry for help, we move. Even if no one asks you to. Especially then. He stepped back. You're not soldiers. You're something older. She didn't correct him. Before leaving, she placed a small disc on the table. Beacon, she said. You'll know how to use it if you ever need us again. Mail didn't touch it. And if we do, she paused at the door. Then you better not be the ones causing the crying. And just like that, she vanished into the ash-colored haze outside. Mail stood alone, heart heavy. They'd survived the war. But something deeper had changed. The Valyri hadn't just been saved. They'd been seen and measured. And somewhere deep in his chest, he feared the Terrans hadn't shown them everything. The Quran fleet was gone. Not routed. Not beaten back. Gone. Their ships wiped from orbit. Their commanders either dead or buried in craters. Their troops surrendered or scattered like leaves of storm. The air above Valyri Prime was strangely calm now, but Mael felt no peace. The Deathworlders hadn't left. Their ships still hovered in low orbit, motionless, silent, watching. No message, no statement, just presence. Reconstruction had begun before the fires stopped smoldering. Valyri citizens emerged from shelters in disbelief. Children stared at the ruins of their cities, asking who had saved them. The adults had no answer that felt right, saying humans didn't explain it, saying Deathworlders didn't ease the unease. So they simply said they came. Mael walked the ruined capital daily, inspecting what little remained of the outer walls. Valyri engineers tried rebuilding using Concord tech, but every time they restored a system, the Deathworlders would quietly send a pulse, disabling the uplinks. They hadn't explained why. They hadn't said anything. But Mael understood. The Terrans wanted no Concord surveillance here. This planet had been touched by something the rest of the galaxy wasn't meant to see. In private, the Council debated how to respond. Treaties? Gifts? An invitation to the diplomatic corps? But no one knew where to send the message. No one had coordinates for Sol. No embassy. No communication relay. Nothing. The Terrans had come like a force of nature, and now they loomed like a warning. And the galaxy was listening. Within days, word spread. Pirate clans that once preyed on Concord border systems vanished. Slaver stations across the Outer Rim were found deserted. Computers melted. No bodies left behind. In the trading post along the galactic fringe, bartenders whispered a news saying, "Don't let the Deathworlders hear you beg." It wasn't a threat. It was a prayer. Mael received dozens of inquiries from neighboring systems, from terrified allies and nervous neutral parties. Who were they? How did you contact them? Can they be reasoned with? His answer was always the same. They don't come for politics. They come for need. Weeks later, an encrypted transmission was intercepted by Concord intelligence. It was short, untraceable, and sent to every major government in the sector simultaneously. The woman Mael had spoken to appeared, standing in a steel chamber aboard her ship. Behind her was a symbol. 2 concentric circles carved into the armor with what looked like claws. There were no banners, no anthem, no declaration of war. Just a calm, even voice. To the galactic Concord. We receive your silence. That was your answer. You have borders and rules. You have doctrines and procedures. You have debates. We don't. When the weak cry out, you hold meetings. We act. Don't thank us. Don't blame us. Just understand, we are not your soldiers. We are not your citizens. We are not your allies. We are what waits in the dark when justice fails. We are what answers when no one else will. The message ended. No reply was ever sent. Some within the Concord argued for war, others for silence, but no directive was issued. No new ships were dispatched to Valyri Prime. Officially, nothing had happened, but unofficially, every military command in the sector updated their tactical manuals with a single red page labeled, "Terra, do not engage." Mael watched the skies for another week before the Deathworlders ships finally moved. No dramatic departure. No goodbyes. They rose from orbit and vanished into FTL without a flare, without a trace, without ceremony, like ghosts returning to wherever they come from. In the absence of noise, Life resumed. But something fundamental had shifted. Valyria schools began teaching soul theory again, not as legend, but as fact. Children now whisper about Terrans the way their grandparents once spoke of monsters. Only now, the monsters were on their side. Maybe, for now, one evening, Mael visited a new memorial being built on the edge of the battlefield. It bore no names, only a single message etched into obsidian stone. Some came because they had to, others came because no one else would. Behind him, Dren approached slowly. The old scholar had aged a decade in a month. They left no instructions, he said. They didn't need to. Will they come again? Mael stared up at the stars. If someone cries loud enough, they will. Dren hesitated. Do you think we should fear them more? Mael turned, face unreadable. I think we still don't understand what we ask for when we beg for help. Far beyond Valyria space, hidden in the dead zones of map systems, a blue planet spun quietly beneath its yellow sun. Its atmosphere was thick with storms. Its seas surged with violence. Its cities gleamed like scars carved into land. Orbiting above it were fleets, not ceremonial, not flashy, but prepared. In training compounds deep within lunar installations, children barely of age ran live combat drills, their instructors barking in accents old as Earth's first wars. Statues lined the halls of Terran command, names unspoken, figures forgotten, only their purpose remembered. One bore a simple plaque, to those who heard the cries and didn't ask who. And in a dark command room aboard a stealth-class cruiser, the woman with the scarred face stood before a new beacon, the one Mael hadn't dared to activate yet. She placed it beside dozens of others, each retrieved from planets that never knew who saved them. No words, no smile. She simply turned off the lights and waited for the next cry.